The Lion King franchise isn't something that's often thought of as, well, a franchise. Everyone knows The Lion King, but upon mentioning any of its sequels to a casual audience, you'll probably get a response along the lines of,
"There are 3 Lion Kings?"
Regardless, it remains to this day one of Disney's most valuable properties. Combine this with the recent revitalizing of many beloved classics in the form of series and shorts on Disney Plus, and we might actually stand a chance of seeing these iconic characters someday return to our screens. Something I remember saying to my brother once is, "Isn't it weird that there was never a sequel to Up?" And he replied, "No, not really, the story's finished, what more can you do?" So I responded, "But what about something like The Lion King 2? As although it's a continuation of the first film's narrative, that original story was concluded and the sequel is merely an extension of that, which is the case with many of Disney's direct-to-video sequels that were prevalent throughout the early 2000s. Anyway, it's 2021 and what do you know, an Up series was released on Disney Plus, albeit consisting of only 5 short episodes. This is Dug Days, the animation of which is probably higher quality than the original film, and all of the core cast members reprise their roles. The most notable being Ed Asner, who voiced Carl, as he actually passed away just 3 days before the series released on Disney Plus, at the age of 91. So it really is a gift that we got to see him return all these years later.
You are my pet, but you are also my best friend. You're a good boy, Doug.
But this is the problem I have. There doesn't seem to be much regard for actors who are getting on now. Like, it really took until Asner was in his 90s for Disney to say, "You know what, let's make an Up series." To them, is it just a case of, we'll get a replacement and nobody'll notice? Because don't get me wrong, I've always been fascinated with impressions, and I do love it when they're absolutely spot on. Though the majority of the time, that isn't the case. With Dug Days, I just can't fault it. You're thrown back into that universe, everything is as we left off. In terms of the overall narrative, it's harmless, with some nice themes, and all in all, it's just nice to see the characters again. As for The Lion King, however, its canon is nowhere near as streamlined and cohesive. Back in the 90s, there was little, if at all, attention to detail in that department. Take The Lion King's Timon and Pumbaa, for example, which was literally a case of, here's Timon and Pumbaa from that Lion King movie, make them do random crap and the kids will love it. Which, at the time, they did, but that's besides the point. It's a bit all over the place, starting out stronger with both of the original voice actors, before Timon had to be juggled between a couple of impressionists. The Lion Guard, which released much later, is in a similar position, with mostly replaced voice actors and a different style of animation. Some of the concepts seen across both of these series are rather outlandish compared to the more grounded universe already established in the Lion King trilogy. This therefore makes these series what we call soft canon, meaning that although some aspects can be considered canon, there are certain elements that contradict or just don't line up with the narrative from the original films. The Lion Guard Season 3's finale tries its best to tie in with the events of The Lion King 2, Simba's Pride, even featuring Kovu, whose original voice actor reprised his role.
Zira raised me to believe that Simba was our enemy. But after I got to know Simba and Kiara, I realized she was wrong.
This explains the absence of Simba's second child, Kion, in the second movie, while simultaneously creating further inconsistencies, such as Kiara's age not matching up in both tellings of the same story. So overall, you can watch The Lion King 1, 2 and 3 to enjoy a nice trilogy of stories that all connect together, though once you start adding the spin-off series to the mix, it gets harder and harder to imagine these events all taking place within that same world. which, like I mentioned before, isn't necessarily a huge problem as both of these did perform well, but looking at it from a broader perspective, how could it be done better? Look no further than Pixar's latest series on Disney+, Monsters at Work.
Boys, we need to talk!
Oh, Roz, what an unpleasant surprise.
This Monsters Inc. spin-off basically takes the Doug Days concept a step further, still being presented in film quality animation with all of the original voice actors returning, but this time in a much more developed story which is told over the course of 10 half-hour-long episodes. This equals to 5 hours in total of new Monsters Inc. content, which is more than the first 2 feature films and shorts combined. What I find astonishing is that the original film released in 2001, the year I was born for Christ's sake, so this new series was made 20 years after that. And yet it feels so authentic to the original that it wouldn't have been out of place had it released in the early 2000s. Billy Crystal and John Goodman as Mike and Sully respectively just slip back into their characters with ease, despite them being around 70 years of age now. Yes, they obviously sound somewhat older, but it's always surprising just how much they embody the characters, so when you hear them, it just feels so right.
'Cause I know what it's like once you stepped across that line. You'd do anything to be on this floor.
So, I actually have a chance of becoming a jokester?
Mike and I, we worked our way up from the mailroom. So anything's possible.
Taking into account all we've learned from this series, what would I like to see in a follow-up to The Lion King? Whether that be in the form of another film or what is probably most ideal, a series, given how perfect of a platform Disney Plus is for this style of viewing. Well, you'd want the visuals to match the original film as closely as possible. The quality of the sequels is fine, but Disney could really make something like this look stunning if they wanted to. There seems to be this consensus that traditionally drawn animation is outdated, but taking the public's nostalgia into account, in this context, it's definitely the way to go. In addition to this, the aspect ratio should be 16:9, like the original. Hans Zimmer should definitely score it, whilst incorporating important motifs from both of the sequels, in relation to character for example. Perhaps with some level of input from Don Harper, who did the score for the third film. Obviously, a huge make or break with this is whether or not they can get the original cast, and luckily most of the core cast are still with us and are pretty active, bar Robert Guillaume, who played Rafiki, who we sadly lost in 2017. Branching out of the sequels, Jerry Stiller, who played Uncle Max in the third film, died only recently in 2020. Usually I'd be against recasting such an iconic character, but the guy who voiced Rafiki in The Lion Guard did a stellar job, and whilst it would have been great to see Uncle Max interacting with other characters, I think having Timon or Ma mention him as having passed away would be a nice touch, which could even offer Timon some additional character development, as he was like a father figure to him. What Monsters at Work did particularly well was balance the new characters introduced in the series with the originals. With other spin-offs in the same vein, you often get a feeling of, oh, clearly they couldn't afford that actor, or it's kind of awkward how they don't mention that one character, and it makes the whole thing feel cheap. I mean, look no further than the Muppets at the moment. Even the casual audience is freaking out over how different Kermit sounds, which is a testament to how important actors are when they're so closely associated with particular characters. It's sort of a subconscious thing that we don't even realise at first, but it's there nonetheless. In Monsters at Work, however, it's clear they've got the whole cast and have the freedom to tell whatever stories they want with them. As with Disney now having the convenience of their own platform to put this stuff on, they seem much more willing to throw money at things they believe in, and that's exactly the kind of treatment you'd hope to see for a staple franchise like The Lion King. I think the third film gives us a great taste of this, with Timon and Pumbaa having an arc of their own. Despite the fact that it's woven into the plot of the first film in this instance, it proves that this kind of thing would totally work independently of that. I love to just see how they're getting on, you know, like what's it like having 2 male lions in the pride with the addition of Kovu. Simba's PTSD from the events of the first film was something touched on in the sequel, so that's something that could be explored further. The version of Simba depicted in The Lion Guard was not very true to the character, so it would be great to see how Simba balances his unique lifestyle of being the king of Pride Rock whilst simultaneously hanging out with Timon and Pumbaa, for example, which we can see he does from the third film's ending. Shows Ma and the other meerkats living the good life at Hakuna Matata Falls, and what's happened with the hyenas now Scar's gone. And can Simba just summon Mufasa's spirit at will? I feel as though if he had one appearance just before the finale, for example, that would have the most impact without downplaying the significance of Mufasa's death. They could go down the route of Kiara and Kovu having cubs, which seems cliche, but that could provide a central character to focus on, much like Kion did for the Lion Guard. Speaking of whom, he's off starting his own pride now, so he has no need to be present, though he could make a one-off appearance in an episode or just be referred to by other characters. That kind of world building would be really satisfying to see take place. Once again, going back to Monsters at Work, whilst most episodes focus on the main character of Tyler, one had more of a focus on a subplot of Mike briefly caring for a child. Whilst heck, in a really cool twist, the ending of the series lines up with the closing scenes of the original film, a concept which has been truly tried and tested already with The Lion King 3. But I'm just throwing around ideas at this point. There's 1,000,001 stories you could tell with this amazing sandbox of characters to play around with. I'm telling you now, in years' time, Disney will finally think, oh, you know, we really had something there with that original Lion King movie. You know, the kids who grew up with it are now adults and have kids of their own. You know what, let's capitalize on that. But by then, the actors and people behind the scenes of the original movie will no longer be with us, and that right there is 90% of the magic gone. Many may argue that The Lion King was a great standalone movie, it doesn't need any more sequels. But expanding a film's narrative into additional media doesn't necessarily degrade the film and make it less good. Take 2008's Iron Man, for example. If anything, the character's subsequent journey throughout various other MCU films adds further meaning and value to that original film upon revisiting it. This can also clearly be seen with Monsters at Work. Was it the highest rated series ever? No. But at the same time, did I see people complaining about it? No. Because it's just the sort of thing that's nice to have, even though you didn't think you needed it. Imagine some guy in his 30s, life's tough, until he catches a glimpse of something familiar on his TV. Suddenly he's transported back to his childhood of watching The Lion King on VHS. For that one moment, he was the happiest he'd been in a long time. Nostalgia's a powerful thing, and Disney have control over it. So ultimately, I want to return to Pride Rock and see these iconic characters once more, before it's too late, as that would make a lot of people very happy. And at this point, what is there to lose? If you enjoyed this video, I'd love to hear your thoughts and ideas for a continuation of the Lion King franchise in the comments section down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to see more content like this. Thank you all for watching.